This is the Energy Makers Show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And here's your host, Paul Dickerson.
Hi, I'm Paul Dickerson, and welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. First up today, Lianne Lami, founder and CEO of Bocci Engineering, one of these consulting firms using the nexus between water, energy, and the environment to really drive its international expansion. Following that, we speak with one of our nation's leading insurers, David Roode at Lockton Company, about risks in the energy industry. All that right after this.
Where will the energy come from to move us forward? From natural sources in abundant supply, or perhaps a man-made source? At NRG, we believe innovation will solve our energy needs. That's why NRG is moving away from fossil fuels towards wind, solar, and other sustainable technologies to power the smart grid, the electric car, and our clean energy future. We're using all of our energy to develop more of it.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. We have with us today Lianne Lami, founder and CEO of Bocci Engineering. Lianne, great to have you on the program.
So nice to be here. Thank you, and an honor.
Well, thank you. And tell us a little bit about Bocci.
Bocci is an environmental and energy consulting firm that specializes in asset risk management.
Tell us what type of company hires Bocci and how is it that you help them?
Absolutely. We are a company that is sought out to perform optimization for projects that are seeking money for growth and development. Companies that are in the industrial sector, oil and gas sector, manufacturing, and large institutional type portfolios, hospitals and the like, that are having infrastructure challenges.
And tell us how you're helping them.
We're helping them to identify savings and environmental improvements, safety improvements, and strategies that bring money to the table that make these projects pay for themselves.
And you focus both on the traditional energy side, also on the alternative energy side.
We do a lot of alternative energy. Actually, most of the projects that we do touch some form of energy and water, and in doing that, they have a positive impact on the environment. The work that we do that is traditional engineering provides an avenue for trading, competitive edge on the hedging side.
Now tell us, pick one of the alternative energy projects and just tell us a little more.
Sure. Well, from our early starts, we did a lot of research around the biofuels and the biodiesels, and today we're looking at a hydrogen reclaim project with a high-tech industrial manufacturer here in Texas.
Hydrogen reclaim. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, that's an exciting project. Hydrogen is a very volatile gas, right, but is also a fuel. And if it's used in the manufacturing process, it can be wasted with very little impact to the environment. But waste is still waste. And if it can be recaptured and used again as a fuel on site in some renewable energy production type application, then everybody wins.
Well, I've heard you talk about a sustainable strategy plan. Can you define that for us and tell us a little more?
Sure. Bocci has a unique approach to carrying projects from concept through completion. There are 4 to 5 stages depending upon the complexity of that project, and the very first stage is setting a sustainable strategic plan. And the importance of understanding at the very beginning what your plan is, in every plan, is to pick goals, know what your stretch capabilities would be, and to identify those in terms of economic value and sustainable impact to the environment.
How do the companies see the return on investment for that type of a service?
Well, I would say that probably one of the strongest value adds that Bocci brings to the table is 75% of the projects that we've participated in actually get funded and move forward into construction. The second thing is that the innovative solutions that we develop are able to generate outside interest for investment. So there's a lot of both national and international funding available for renewable, alternative energy, and environmental projects. that investment, if it has a positive rate of return, can be used to rebuild infrastructure from institutions and municipals all through traditional oil and gas sector.
You really have, in short order, moved from being a regional to an international, not even national, but international firm. Tell us about that growth spurt and where you're looking internationally.
What is really new is this nexus around energy, water, environment, health, people, food, and safety. And in every one of those, if you affect one, you drive and impact the other. And so if you look at the energy and the industry around industry, it's absolutely an international trade. And the money that's being invested through energy projects is coming in both nationally and internationally. Here in the U.S., we recently converted from what was a major importer of energy to the first time ever being an exporter of energy.
It's amazing, isn't it?
An amazing change.
So quick.
So Boccie went from being pretty active regionally in doing energy-based projects. We got a little credibility. The phone was ringing, and we were being called to participate on national projects. And instead of chasing more of the commercial-based, green, sustainable lead engineering services, more of the MEP type firms,
right,
we went the consulting route, and we participated in helping other firms make their projects financially successful.
Are there certain regions of the world that you're targeting or feel your services are better provided?
Yeah, some of the areas that we're being brought into are areas that are under major growth with their needs for energy and infrastructure in China, in India, and certainly in areas even more locally close to home, offshore Mexico, where the infrastructure is fairly degraded and still having some environmental issues.
Well, we hear a lot from the energy executives about increased regulation. Can you give your thoughts on, within the energy industry, some of the regulations that have caught your eye and how you're helping clients navigate through that?
Yeah, well, even just here in Texas, there's been numerous House bills that have passed that have been earmarked towards water infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and emergency power in place to able to sustain some of the emergency outages that we've had or the issues that we've had with droughts and hurricanes. The recent House bill that's been passed that supports combined heat and power development is going to be instrumental in how Texas moves forward in their production with the shale gas finds, even just in Eagleford. They're really being degraded from, or I should say constrained by not having ample access to available water and available power. And this new House bill is going to fast track permitting for combined heat and power generation facilities through the TCEQ. And that permitting process is going to allow the infrastructure to be built, and it's going to bring jobs back to the economy.
Well, and it's been a good year for you. Did I hear that there was at least 4 awards that you won? Why don't you pick one and tell us about it?
We have. We've had a phenomenal year. The most exciting award that we've recently been selected for is the Regional Star Award for the Women's Business Enterprise Alliance. And that's recognition at the national level for the Women's Business Enterprise National Council.
Well, Leanne, thank you so much for coming in today.
Paul, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that concludes our discussion with Lianne Lami. We'll be back with more right after this.
The future is here.
You can't see it. It's electric.
At NRG, we're providing clean energy and now charging stations to make the electric car a reality. Kinda makes you want a boogie woogie, doesn't it? NRG, moving clean energy forward.
It's electric.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. My guest now, David Roode with Lockton Companies. David, thank you for being on the program.
Good to see you, Paul. Good to be here.
So maybe if you could start, tell the audience a little bit about Lockton.
We're headquartered in Kansas City. We're the world's largest privately owned insurance brokerage firm, and we have offices on every continent with the exception of Antarctica. The penguins and the polar bears don't buy too much insurance, but we have 58 offices globally. There's 300 or so partners, 4,100 or so associates. For the most part, Lockton, Houston is pretty heavily concentrated in the energy industry. It's hard
Right.
not to be. But our Houston office, we have about 250 associates, about 100 or so folks dedicated solely to our energy practice. And inside that energy practice, we represent about 100 or so E&P companies, 16 or so major national energy service companies, 15 or so midstream pipeline operators, 11 marine transportation or so companies, and a number of energy manufacturing companies and suppliers. So we know the business pretty well.
How do you handle hydraulic fracking type insurance issues?
Well, it's an interesting topic. It's a very hot topic, kind of like religion and politics, almost taboo. But it's pretty straightforward practice if it's done properly, and the risks certainly are there. But again, if the process is executed properly, the original setup and then the ongoing operations, there really is not any risk there. I mean, the big concern is about the polluting the aquifers.
All right, so you're insuring some of these companies involved with the fracking.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, tell me how that works.
Well, I mean, it just like anything else, we get introduced to them, they get introduced to us, we learn about their business, and then we approach the market for them. But it's a little bit more complicated than that these days, because more and more people are aware of hydraulic fracturing and what it is and what it isn't. And so our job is to really understand what makes this company unique and why they're good at their job in fracturing these wells, and then communicate that to the markets to make sure that they not only are able to get insurance for the risks they want to insure, but then that they're also getting credit for the good job that they're doing in the field, and not being, say, lumped together with maybe peers of theirs that don't exactly have the best operating track record in terms of those having issues on a job and which turn into claims, versus those who have little or no issues on the job and don't really bring any claims to the market, and thus shock the market, if you will.
And let's say great company, great process, suddenly something goes wrong, they've contaminated an aquifer, they call you, what happens next?
Sure. Well, just like anything, everybody's got to quickly get a good understanding of what happened and to what extent it happened. We have a tremendous amount of resources internally in our firm, but then also the insurers getting involved as well. Obviously, they signed a contract with these guys. If certain perils,
right.
cause action, then their policy is to respond. And so, if the company has bought the appropriate cover, then we make sure that the contract works for them the way it's supposed to. And that's from day one to the day they get a check. And so essentially that's the way it's supposed to work, and that's generally the way we like it to work. But again, a lot of those issues when a claim occurs can be mitigated on the front end by really understanding the company, making sure the underwriters understand the company and their operations, then making sure everybody involved in that process understands the contract.
Right.
And they know what's insured and what's not insured. Obviously, this is a hot topic. The insurance for this type of activity is getting more difficult to procure, but that's not to say that it cannot be procured.
Well, looking from the global perspective, for U.S. Equipment manufacturing companies looking to go abroad, what are some of the risks that they need to be aware of?
Sure. Well, as you know, a lot of these countries are still evolving. Some of them do have certain rules and regulatory authorities, but with that evolvement, things are constantly changing. And so you really have to be on top of that. And unless you're already a company that's operating globally, a lot of the companies don't have the resources to really fully understand the issues they might face in country. Take, for example, Brazil. Brazil's a very exciting place. Petrobras, with their $225 billion capital budget announcement, it's a very unique place. It's very pro-Brazil, very pro-state, pro-employee. So you really have to hire and fire with perfect execution. And you also have to be very careful in and your procurement. The procurement is the Brazilian government wants it really to be Brazilian in origin, and so if you don't follow the rules and regulations, just like anywhere else, you can get into trouble, and fines can be levied. And just as these countries are continuing to grow and develop, they're looking to bring in revenue wherever they can.
Now, when you're looking at places like Africa or Asia or further down in Latin America, what are some of the other risks that companies need to be aware of?
Well, as these countries are evolving, they have their own civil issues, and you have changes in the government, and you can provide all sorts of instability in the country. And again, if you're not aware of what's going on in the country, you could find yourself in a position where you can't get your people out because a civil war is going on or property is seized. And that could be property or a manufacturing facility, sure, or whatever that's crucial to your business that ultimately can interrupt your operations in the other parts of the world you're doing business. So that's an area of concern. Obviously, in some of the nastier parts of the world that are still kind of developing, you have kidnap and ransom exposures of key individuals, or even just your everyday employees, associates of the company being exposed to some of the stuff going on in
How
these
do you
countries.
insure against that type of risk? Because a lot of our energy company friends are sending
Sure.
Folks down and putting them at risk. So how does that work?
Well, it's part of it is a mix of healthy mitigation practices, along with the understanding of what they're doing, where they're going, how long they're going to be doing it for, and then getting the various underwriters that will insure for that risk to buy off on that and agree to insure the risk and go from there.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Good to see you, Paul, and congratulations on your recent news of being an engaged man.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Alex, who I know will be watching, I'm sure will appreciate that shout out. And that wraps this week's episode of the Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio nationwide and seen right here at TheEnergyMakers.com. I'm Paul Dickerson, and we'll see you next week.